Hey everybody, tonight we're debating Christianity or secular humanism, which is better for society, and we are starting right now.
Christianity is divisive.
What's the data that shows that?
Well, look at history. Look at Catholics
No.
and Protestants killing each other, right?
Okay, what's the
Look at
evidence
the
Christianity caused
indiscriminate
that? What's the evidence Christianity caused that? Because I could just say, yeah, look, if secularism leads to death, look at the USSR. And you wouldn't accept that. But why should I accept what you're saying? We've seen this throughout research in the past. People thought like certain things, would lead to like this effect, and we find out that's not actually the thing. This happens in medicine all the time. We think like this nutritional aspect leads to like poor health, and then we find out, oh, it was just a correlation, not a causation. So what you're citing here is correlative. Do you have any evidence of a positive association to suggest a causal link? What is the evidence that your side is actually going to be better for society? So far, Dan, at this point, you've given no evidence whatsoever, no studies, no data, no evidence that secularism is actually better. Let me finish. No better. I've given multiple studies. All you've done is you've said like, well, there's problems in Christianity. Okay, what is the actual reason that secularism is even better? You just can't be like, well, I don't like Christianity. I think it's divisive. Therefore, my side is better.
Mike Jones from Inspiring Philosophy recently debated Dan Barker on whether Christianity or secular humanism is better for society. This video is my response to Mike Jones's claims. I'm going to walk you through how he distorts research in order to make it fit a specific story, and how he sneaks in claims the sources do not actually support. This will be a series of videos because there is a lot to cover. I do not want it to be a pure takedown. I want it to be useful. So as we go, I will give you quick tips for spotting red flags when Christian apologists cite social science, history, or the Bible. In this first video and the next one, we will focus on research basics and how to read statistics with confidence. You do not need a college degree in social science to follow along. By the end of these two videos, you will know what questions to ask the next time someone waves a paper or book at you and says, "See, this proves it." Stick around to the end because I am going to show you that one of Mike's own sources openly contradicts his position. Alright, let's jump in.
I will only be arguing that Christianity creates more optimal societies that can endure and generate progress.
Before touching any data, step 1 in the debate is to state your claim clearly. Mike does that here. Good. But listen to how broad it is. Christianity creates more optimal societies. It is a big claim that needs careful definitions, which brings us to tip 1. Always ask, what do you mean by ... Start with the word Christianity. What does Mike mean by that? All Christian traditions across history, including the ones that defended slavery and persecution of heretics and pagans? Or a narrower version he prefers? Does he mean Christians as people, or Christianity as an institution and set of doctrines? If he differentiates those, how? The debate title is not very nuanced, so some of this is not on Mike. Still, he could tell us which Christianity he is majoring. In other debates, he sometimes points to the Nicene Creed. That still leaves a wide range of beliefs and practices. You will see why this kind of fog helps him. It lets him slide towards a no true Scotsman fallacy when examples do not fit the story. Now look at the words he used: more optimal and progress. What counts as optimal? How do we measure progress? Life expectancy? Civil rights, scientific output, GPT per capita, corruption levels, happiness? In this video, you will see a pattern in his choices. He highlights the metrics that fit the narrative and does not engage others that matter for a healthy society. You can catch this yourself by asking, what do you mean by that term and how are you measuring it? Hello my friends, this is Shane from Mindful Living. Welcome to the channel. I hold a master's in applied psychology and a master's in divinity, which helps when people bring social science into theological arguments. My goal is to slow things down, look at the evidence, and show you how to read it for yourself. Let's keep going.
Now, by Christian societies, I mean those that are based on Christian values, and the majority of the population identify as Christian, regardless of governmental laws.
Okay, that sounds like a definition. A Christian society is majority Christian and built on Christian values. But that immediately raises a basic question. What counts as Christian values, and who decides? Take a few life examples. Some Christians hold an egalitarian view of marriage, while others insist on complementarian roles where women submit to men. Some oppose same-sex marriage, while others support legal recognition. Some push Christian nationalism, while others defend liberal democracy and separation of church and state. Which side is the Christian value? If it is automatically the side that aligns with secular humanism, what does that tell us? Also keep in mind what Mike just said about hate count. He says a Christian society is where most people identify as Christian. But you will see him tighten that definition later and shrink who actually counts as Christian. He also skips a key question. Are we talking about the flourishing of Christian societies only, which would make it acceptable to exploit non-Christian societies, or the flourishing of humanity as a whole?
Now, it's abundantly clear from multiple studies that Christianity has made the world a better place through missionary work.
This is where I have to stop and talk about history. The way missionary work gets celebrated in sweeping terms often erases what actually happened on the ground during colonial expansion. In the Americas, European arrival brought conquest and devastating disease. Estimates suggest that indigenous population fell from about 60 million in 1492 to about 6 million within about a century. That's a reduction of 90%. Whatever the exact breakdown between violence and epidemics, the result was catastrophic. Historians sometimes call it the Great Dying. Sure, indigenous nations fought one another at times, but they still built and sustained populations around 60 million across the Americas, taking a society from 60 million to 6 million, and only then teaching them kindness, forgiveness, and non-retaliation. Is that what we are calling optimal? So when someone says missionary activity clearly made the world better, we have to ask, better for whom, and by what metric? If optimal society means safer, healthier, and more flourishing for the people already living there, the record is embarrassing. If it means optimal for the colonizers, that is a different conversation, and we should be honest about it. Could Mike try to bracket the violence and say the good came later through schools and hospitals? Maybe, but you cannot celebrate the civilizing benefits and skip the cost paid by the people who were displaced, coerced, or eradicated. Intention does not erase impact. If a claim is that Christian societies are optimal, then the history of how those societies expanded matters. It is part of the ledger. Now, Mike might say the colonizers did not represent Christian values because they were not truly religious, and that the real Christians were the ones helping indigenous peoples. That move is the no true Scotsman fallacy, which brings us back to the question from the start. Who decides what counts as Christian values, and what counts as a deviation? Disliking the brutality does not let you declare the brutal actors non-Christian. Yes, many missionaries objected to what settlers were doing. That does not mean the kind and altruistic ones are the only real Christians, while the rest somehow do not count. Remember Mike's own definition? A Christian society is one where most people identify as Christian. By that standard, the vast majority of settlers qualified. He cannot shrink the category only when it hurts his case. Some Christians say the world benefited from Western science and technology. Fair enough. But those benefits could have spread through trade, cultural exchange, and diplomacy without crushing native cultures. Think about how food culture travels. I live in Canada, and when my family goes out for dinner, I sometimes see white diners using chopsticks. Then I look over and my kids are happily using forks. It feels a little surreal in a nice way. Our lives get richer when we share cultures. But I digress. Look at the residential schools in Canada and boarding schools in the US. They were designed to erase indigenous identity. Mike says freedom is a Christian value, yet he treats the forced remaking of indigenous cultures as acceptable because it brought education and tech. But does that really justify the coercion?
Without Christianity, the world would not be as educated and advanced as it is now.
Tip 2 for viewers. Correlation is not causation. People often see two things move together and then assume one caused the other. That is a mistake. If two trends line up, it might be coincidence, it might be a third factor driving both, or there might be a causal link that still needs proof. Until we have evidence for causation, we should not claim it. When most people in the West were Christian, it feels natural to give Christianity credit for Western progress. But we do not know what would have happened if secular humanism had been the majority view back then. History does not give us a controlled experiment. We cannot run the past twice to compare timelines. It is also true that during the colonial period, many non-Western, non-Christian regions had less advanced technology. That gap helped the West conquer them. But that does not show those societies were secular humanist and therefore slower. We had no modern secular states until very recently. So yes, you can say Christians played a role in Western development because Christians were the majority in those societies. What you cannot do is jump from that to a claim that Christianity is better than secular humanism. It's not at all clear that Christian values caused those advances. Other factors were at work: institutions, trade, geography, political competition, access to capital, and more. We will dig into this later. Quick definition before we go on. By secular humanism, I mean the view that humans should seek what benefits human society, not what pleases a deity. It values reason and critical thinking over faith. It grounds morality in what helps people flourish, not in divine commands. You can be religious and still be a secular humanist in practice. It simply means you do not make your daily decisions based on ancient texts or religious dogma. Do I think secular humanism is better than Christianity at building an optimal society? My short answer is yes, with a few caveats that I will explain later. For now, let's focus on why Mike's specific arguments do not establish his claim.
Secularists have not gone out and done this, and there is nothing in anything we could call secular doctrine that compels them to spread their worldview and educate people in the process.
That is a very unfair claim. Secular humanists do not need a creed to feel compelled before they help others. Plenty of people who hold secular values build schools, fund research, create vaccines, fight poverty, and improve public health. They just do not grab a megaphone and say, I'm doing this for secular humanism. Saying secularists have not gone out and done this, mistake quiet work for no work. Mike's framing also reveals something about his own standard. He treats indoctrination as a feature. Christian teaching in this view pushes you to spread the worldview while you help. Yes, some Christians give without the strings attached. I am not denying that. I am responding to Mike's specific claim that spreading the Christian worldview is a positive in itself.
Christianity has Christ commanding the Great Commission, which makes it our duty to make the world a better place.
Actually, the Great Commission is about making disciples, not about improving living standards or expanding education. Since Mike did not quote it, let's read it. Go, therefore, and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything that I have commanded you. Matthew 28, verses 19 to 20. Where does this say, go raise literacy rates, or go advance medicine, or go improve technology? It doesn't. The New Testament has many verses about preaching and converting. It does not have a program for scientific progress or public schooling. Christians can and do contribute to science and education. That is true. The question is whether the text itself commands or uniquely grounds that mission. It does not. I will dig into the history and theology of this in a later video. For today, we will stay focused on Mike's research claims and check whether the studies he cites actually support his conclusions.
Numerous studies show religiosity is associated with more charitable giving to religious and secular organizations, whereas secularism is not. When compiling the data from multiple studies, this systematic review concluded, our systematic literature review covering 77 studies reveals that religion, measured as group affiliation, values, beliefs, and the importance of faith to the believer, as well as religious service attendance and private prayer, most often positively relates with giving to outgroup and secular organizations.
Notice the shift. Mike is no longer saying Christianity drives greater giving. He has to broaden it to religiosity. That is because the paper he cites is about religiosity in general, not Christianity in particular. You can be religious in many traditions. The review does not single out Christianity as uniquely generous toward outgroups or secular causes, which leads to my tip 3. Pay close attention to what the study actually measures. Mike's presentation relies on viewers not noticing that the variables in the study are different from the claim he is making. He fires studies in quick succession, but the bridge from the measured variable to his conclusion is often missing. In this case, he treats religiosity as if it were the same thing as Christianity. He gives no reason for that leap. Even if more detailed data showed that Christians on average give more to secular organizations, that still would not prove that distinctively Christian values are the cause. Teachings on giving vary across denominations and traditions. What counts as the Christian value when Christians themselves disagree? Take a life example. In some evangelical circles, people argue you should prioritize the in-group before helping outsiders. The U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance has used that logic to justify tighter immigration, calling it a very Christian concept. Religious leaders pushed back, saying care for the foreigner and the marginalized sits at the core of Christian teaching. Which one represents the Christian value? Who decides? This is why definitions matter. If you can pick the slice of Christianity that fits your conclusion and ignore the rest, you can make almost any claim look supported by the data. Furthermore, the paper Mike cites is careful about its own limits. It says that while many studies find a positive link between religiosity and giving to secular or outgroup causes, some studies find no link or even a negative one. Their abstract puts it like this. Despite the dominant positive relationship between religion and giving to outgroup and secular organizations, there remains heterogeneity among the studies based on their location, how they define religion and secular giving, and the methods used. Translation: other factors are at play. On the surface, it can look like Christian faith is doing all the work, but something else that social scientists call confounding variables may be driving both the faith measure and the generosity measure. That is why correlation is not causation. Reality is more complex than a simple yes or no. So what exactly is a confounding variable? It is an unmeasured third factor that influences both the supposed cause and the supposed effect. Let me give you a classic example. As ice cream sales go up, sunburns go up. It will be silly to say ice cream causes sunburns. The truth is that hot weather increases both ice cream consumption and time in the sun. If you ignore temperature, you jump to the wrong conclusion. Apply that here. If you see a relationship between religiosity and giving to secular groups, it does not mean religiosity causes the giving. A third factor might boost both, which can also explain why some studies do not find the relationship. In their context, the third factor is missing or weaker. If you remember only one thing from this video, let it be this. Interpreting social science is trickier than Mike makes it look. When someone waves a paper to prove a point, start with two simple questions. First, is this correlation or causation? Second, does the study actually measure what you say it measures? Most sweeping claims fail on one of those. We will cover more questions later, but these two will already take you far.
Another study looked at 53 nations and found that frequent churchgoers are more active in volunteer work and that a devout national context has an additional positive effect. So when a nation is religiously Christian, volunteer work is increased across the board.
The paper is solid, but it does not show what Mike wants. Remember tip 3, check what the study actually measures. This one measures volunteering, which the authors define much more broadly than charity. They list 7 buckets. 1. Social welfare services for elderly, handicapped, or deprived people. 2. Religious or church organizations. 3. Education, arts, music, or cultural activities. 4. Labor unions. 5. Political parties or groups. 6. Conservation, environment, and animal rights groups. And 7. Professional associations. Now think about the debate claim. Mike is arguing that Christianity produces more optimal societies. But in this dataset, you can volunteer for a political campaign, a professional guild, or a church choir, and it still counts as volunteering. Those are not automatically indicators of societal flourishing. Second, volunteering for religious organizations makes up about 46% of all volunteering in these studies. If that is the case, it is not surprising that religious people show higher volunteer rates. Organized religion creates many built-in opportunities to volunteer, so a gap between religious and non-religious people is exactly what you would expect from the way the measure is constructed. Third, this is not uniquely Christian. The paper notes that people with non-Christian religious affiliations are about as engaged in general volunteer work as Protestants, while Catholics volunteer significantly less than either group. In other words, Christianity does not stand out above other religions. So the headline should not be Christian nations boost volunteering across the board. A more accurate takeaway is higher religiosity and strong religious institutions tend to correlate with more reported volunteering, much of which is within religious organizations themselves. That does not prove that Christianity uniquely creates optimal societies. Incidentally, this 53-nation paper includes a result that cuts against Mike's thesis. More prosperous countries tend to be more democratic, spend more on social security, and are less religious overall. If your picture of an optimal society includes higher GDP, stronger democracy, and better welfare, you should know those traits are negatively correlated with national religiosity. Mike does not touch this. We will come back to it in my second video. For now, just keep it in mind.
Now, it is clear secularists do give money to charities in volunteer times, but not at the level that Christians do. Christianity has been one of the greatest institutions for wealth transfer from the rich to the poor in the history of humanity. And this was accomplished throughout the world because of missionary and charity work. And as noted, numerous studies show Christianity has made the world a better place through missionary activity.
Given how strongly Mike states this, you would expect the next papers to show that adopting Christian faith increases altruistic behavior. Let's see what he brings next.
One study says in a cross-national investigation of 126 countries with a total of over 179,000 respondents, religiosity was correlated with likelihood of helping a stranger. Notably, people within countries with greater religious diversity and members of minority religion were even more likely to help strangers.
Did you catch it? We are back to religiosity again, not Christianity. That distinction matters. If a study is US only, you might try to use religiosity as a rough proxy for Christian identity. But this study covers 126 countries. You cannot equate religiosity with Christianity in a global dataset. And if the reply is, well, missionaries raised religiosity in those countries, that still does not work. Many places are shaped by non-Christian religions, both historically and today. The authors of this paper actually report that the groups most likely to help strangers are, in order, Jews, Muslims, Orthodox Christians, other religions, Buddhists, Protestants, and Catholics. In other words, among religious people, Protestants and Catholics are at the bottom of this particular helping strangers measure. If you use this result to crown a winner, you would end up saying Judaism and Islam outperform Christianity on this altruism metric. I do not think Mike will want that conclusion. One more clarity point. Secular humanist does not equal non-religious. Many people who mark no religion have never heard of secular humanism and may hold superstitions or vague beliefs. Secular humanism is a positive program that centers human welfare. It uses reason, evidence, and secular ethics to solve human problems and does not base day-to-day decisions on dogma or appeals to the supernatural. That is a subset of the non-religious category. So even if a study finds that non-religious people help strangers less often in some context, that is not an indictment of secular humanism as a philosophy. Next time you hear a claim about the non-religious, ask whether the major is capturing secular humanists, atheists, unaffiliated spiritual people, or a mix of all three. Lumping them together muddies the picture and lets arguments slide past without support.
So the data indicate Christianity leads to more charity work inside a nation and beyond its borders. And this in turn has led to more economic progress, medical care, freedom, etc., many other positive benefits. If nations secularize, this will decrease, which I think we all could agree is not a good thing.
Earlier, I noted that one of Mike's own sources reports a negative association between national religiosity and things like economic progress, welfare spending, and democracy. Religiosity is not the same as Christianity, I get that, but Mike still has not shown evidence that Christianity specifically drives democracy, medical advances, and everything else on his list. Some of those might correlate with Christian populations, but correlation does not prove causation. And we have not dealt with the fact that Christianity is not one thing. Different Christian traditions teach different moral priorities and sometimes pull in the opposite directions. Whether you are a Christian or not, I hope we can agree that one marker of an optimal society is that science thrives in that society. Now look at real life. In the modern world, a large share of organized resistance to evolutionary biology comes from religious communities, especially Christian ones. Young Earth creationism is overwhelmingly Christian. If Christianity uniquely fosters science, why do we see so much Christian opposition to a core scientific field? If you believe in creationism, you might say that evolution should not be part of science. But Mike Jones believes in theistic evolution, so you might want to take your issue to him. Mike often says we should thank Christianity for science because Christian ideas were crucial to its rise. If that were true in a straightforward way, what would we expect today? I think that apart from less pushback against the scientific community by Christians, we should expect scientists to be more Christian than the general public and elite scientists to be even more so. But the pattern we see in surveys is the opposite. Scientists tend to be less religious than their surrounding populations, and the most prominent scientists are even less religious. I am not claiming that secularism causes scientific curiosity. These are correlations, not proof of cause. My point is simpler. The picture we actually see does not match the story that Christianity, more than secular humanism, uniquely propels science forward. So where does this leave us for today? We saw three simple tools that already do a lot of work. First, ask what the key terms mean. Second, check if the claim is correlation or causation. Third, make sure the study measures what the speaker says it measures. Once you apply this, the shine on Mike's argument fades fast. His own sources point to problems he never addresses, and in some cases, they cut against his thesis. In the next video, we will take on a big question. Who really deserves credit for nice things such as schools, hospitals, the abolition of slavery, and democracy? Then we will look at the birth rate panic Mike often raises as a supposed weakness of secular humanism. I have data that might surprise you. If this was helpful and you want the sequel, please like and subscribe. If you watched the Mike and Dan debate and want me to address a specific claim, leave it in the comments, and I will try to include it. Thank you for watching. See you in part 2.